Hey class, it's the Management 2400, the Supply Chain Innovations class, and this part, the video, is a replacement for a regular class or a partial replacement for a regular class that was cancelled yesterday due to an inclement weather. So my plan is to just briefly touch the important topic. The discussion will be about the supply chain networks, and we will highlight this topic again when we will meet for the first time during our regular class. So let me open the presentation that I have prepared for this, and I will just walk you through a few slides that I think are important and have to be highlighted when the discussion is about supply chain networks. So the supply chain networks, as the name says, is a connection or a set of connectivities that we have among different partners with the supply chain. So we mentioned this before, the traditional pipeline supply chain that will go from the left to the right hand side will have a set of suppliers, manufacturers, retailers, distributors, and then the final user. Well, the network basically is the connection between all those large and small parts within the supply chain. So there's the reason why they are called supply chain networks. As it says here, so they will give us a chance and they allows us to use and to somehow have a better and the big picture of what's going on in the supply chain and to track two important flows. And we talked about those two flows. The first one is flow of materials, and then the second one is flow of information. We said and we mentioned at what conditions the materials can travel from the left to the right hand side and backwards, and also we talked about information. Among the information flows, the very important part is the forecasting, and later during the semester we will talk about this part as well. So as said before, the supply chain networks basically will give us a better understanding of these two important flows. It will also give us a better understanding of time related component. It will give us a better understanding on the inventory related component. So it will basically give us a chance to understand what's going on within the supply chain. And basically with this, we can say that understanding the supply chain networks will open a door for us to understand better what a supply chain is, what are the processes in supply chains, and what are the important stakeholders that creates a supply chain. So if this is the very simplified supply chain, so let's think about a apple farm. So we all will be picking up apples in maybe in a local farm in the New England region next fall. But the process is pretty straightforward. So let's now assume that we are trying to make an apple juice. So it will start with the apple picking. So at the apple farm, apples will then travel to apple juicing plant, and then probably at some of the distribution centers, they can be local or a national. From this part, the product, this will be a apple juice, will travel to regional distribution center, and then down the line, it will reach the final stage when the customer can purchase an apple juice. So it probably will be available at shops, supermarkets, and vending machines. So this is a very traditional supply chain, and we also introduced the name for this supply chain. It's so-called a pipeline supply chain. So let me now go a step further and let's talk about a supply chain network. So with every box that we showed before, there are various other boxes. So if we are going to pack the apple juice into a plastic bottles, or if we are going to in the manufacturing plant apple juice in a different forms, like glass bottles, plastic bottles. So all distributors, all suppliers for these different materials are this new important member of a supply chain network. So basically, whatever is needed for the production, for the manufacturing process of a final product, these are all members and steps in a supply chain network. So quite often, the supply chain networks and network members will be either ignored or neglected, and we will have this view on a supply chain with a very traditional pipeline approach, where we'll say, okay, we have a supplier, we have a manufacturer, and then we have on the right hand side distributor, retailer, so whoever delivers product to the final user. But there will be always a set of like a different actors that are important members of the supply chain, and they will create a supply chain networks. Together with this video, I will post a YouTube video when you will be able to go through a digital supply chain network. So this is a very new approach that will be addressed later during semester as well. We will go into digital supply chains in a very detailed way. We will talk about so-called blockchain technologies as well. But for now, the important message for us is to understand what a supply chain networks are and what are the important streams in a supply chain networks. And it says here we have an upstream and we have a downstream. So we have a flow of information and flow of various products in a supply chain. So the supply chain networks by itself, according to the definition, shows the links between different organizations and different flows, the material and the information flows. And as it's mentioned here, and you can imagine that some of those supply chain networks can really be very complex. We saw a video about a Ford manufacturing plant the other day, and with the understanding that there are approximately 1,000 different parts in average car, we can assume that the car manufacturing supply chain will be a very complex supply chain network with a tremendous number of flows in both directions. So it's the information and the material flow. So as we said before, so we will track two important flows, and we will definitely spend some other time during the semester when we will be analyzing these two important flows. So flows within the organization can be internal and external. Besides material and information flows, it will probably be the case that the internal flow will go inside the particular organization, although the external flow will connect different members of a supply chain. So we are basically adding a complexity into a supply chain with one important goal. And this goal was mentioned before, it is the forecasting. So the forecasting is the driver for the supply chain. So basically, what will happen in the future? What is the market demand will define the forecasting, and the forecasting will be the decision-making process that the members in a supply chain network will use to plan, manufacture, design, redesign parts of the supply chain. So this basically was a short part that I tried to cover today, and I will briefly mention the topics tomorrow when we will meet. And as well, please go to the video that is posted besides this video, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you guys will have about the topic tomorrow or later on during the semester. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to see you tomorrow in the classroom.